Hello, welcome to today's recording of the webinar Sales Presentations That Grab Your Attention. My name is Linda Gross. I'll be your presenter today, and I'm very pleased and honored to be invited by the Small Business Center to present this presentation that we have created that really focuses on showing you how you can create, using PowerPoint, sales presentations that grab your audience. As I said, my name is Linda Gross. I am the founder of Impact Communications. I've been a consultant, coach, and trainer for, pretty close to 30 years now. During that time, I've gained a lot of experience in working with businesses, teaching them and creating software solutions that improve their business success, help them generate more business, earn more dollars, keep employees more satisfied, and definitely keep clients happy. So what we do at Impact Communication is we translate your ideas into messages that will inspire your audience. As I said, we work with presentations all the time, and so we've come up with a formula really that is pretty much guaranteed to improve the delivery of your message, to get people to understand what it is that you're trying to say. And that formula is 3 simple steps to grab their attention. The first step is to engage your audience quickly. We're going to spend a lot of time on this and look at how do you actually engage an audience? What does that mean? Then we're going to move into how do you connect with that audience deeply. We want to show you how you can actually build a really strong bond with that audience, with those clients, those potential people. And then the third step we're going to go through and show you is probably the most important one. How do you motivate people? How do you get them to buy your product, adopt your ideas, change their behavior based on your suggestions? So that's our 3-step formula that we've created, and it's a pretty surefire guarantee that if you follow this formula, your message is going to be delivered a lot more clearly, cleanly, and with better results. That's why it's important, because every day we see and we know there are millions and millions of presentations being delivered all across North America. Presentations have become the new way to communicate, the new way to really sell your ideas. And it's not just products that get sold in presentations. It's actually ideas as well. People will use presentations when they want to show their employees a new policy that's being implemented, a new initiative that's being delivered. I know that City Hall and various forms of government will use presentations to gain community support, find out, what the community is thinking. So it's not just products, it's policies. I've also seen where project managers now use presentations to deliver status reports. Used to be that they would sit and write actual detailed reports and distribute that. How many of you remember the era of the inter-office memo? When was the last time you saw one of those? Haven't they pretty much gone way of the dodo bird? That's because people have discovered how easy and how simple it is to use PowerPoint, and that's sort of a good thing, but I'm going to also show you how that can be sort of a bad thing also if not used properly. So all sorts of status reports and updates and things like that will be done using presentations. You only have to watch what's going on down south with the presidential elections to see how politics is now using presentations. I actually, in my training courses, have a sample of one that was done several years ago by Hillary Clinton when she was running up against Barack Obama. And it was stunning to see how a woman running for the highest seat, the highest office in the country, was using such a poorly created tool that didn't deliver her message at all. It didn't capitalize on any of the things that PowerPoint could actually have done for her. I'm not going to be so bold as to say that's why she lost the election, of course. However, I do know that there are a lot of things that could have been done to deliver her message with more impact and more power. Who knows what might have been the result? So definitely in the world of politics, and of course, just like I'm doing today in the world of education, every day we see professors and teachers and instructors using presentations because it's a very easy way to gather a body of people together, show the information that they want to teach them. The only problem we see is that quite often it looks like the textbook has been photocopied and put onto a slide. So all of these different ways of using presentations have become very popular. Unfortunately, not everybody uses them well. And I'd like to think that part of that problem is perhaps because it's so simple to simply sit down at your computer, open up your PowerPoint, and start typing away. So we're going to take a step back. We're going to go back to before you even open up your computer, before you even touch it. Let's take a look at really what is the best way to approach creating a presentation where you want to pass on some really important information, perhaps sell somebody, whether it's a new policy, you want to sell them on the idea of why a project needs more resources or why it needs to have more finance, more budget in order to be able to accomplish its actual intended goals. You want to be able to see how do you stand the best chance at delivering a powerful message. Now I'm going to suggest that the best place to start is actually taking a look at what is it that we can do with PowerPoint. PowerPoint in the marketing environment can be very, very powerfully used to inform, persuade, and influence your audience. So that is PowerPoint's ability, is to really not command, not demand. Really, anytime you're marketing, whether you're using PowerPoint or not, you want to be persuading and influencing people. And then when you go in for the close, when you want to actually get people to do that thing, whether it's to buy it or to agree with you, or whether it's to change their behavior, even if it's just a simple action of call you to set up a meeting or click through to your site to take a look at what you offer, that's the selling piece. And so PowerPoint actually can be very powerful in helping people see the steps that are required. They can actually visualize it. They don't have to imagine in their own head. You can show them the steps that they need to go through in order to sell, which makes it really simple. There's no confusion. So let's take a look at what it is that most people actually do when they start off to sell. Now, as I said, there's many different reasons why you can use PowerPoint, and I know the people in our audience probably have a number of different reasons. For the purpose of this session, I'm going to use the example of a company, the traditional example of a company that's going out trying to promote its services to a group of people that it's called together. So that's the example, and adapt if you can to your situation. Throughout our webinar, we normally have room for people to ask questions. I'm sorry, the hotel I was staying at had an actual complete internet failure. All their hardware completely failed halfway through our webinar, which is why you're receiving this recorded version. They were mortified and actually gave me the cost of my room for free, which was nice for me, but terrible in the sense that we didn't get to deliver this webinar the way we wanted to. So I know what I would normally be doing is getting you to ask a lot of questions throughout this. Go ahead and ask your questions to me anyhow. Just send them to me in an email, and I promise to get back to you. And what I'll actually do is I'll gather up all those questions. We'll give it a couple of days, okay? Let's give it a week after we send this out, and I'll then make sure that everybody is emailed all the answers so that you get to participate. All right, and I'll try to make this as absolutely interesting and riveting as possible so that you're not nodding off. I would hope that there's some content here that actually intrigues you. All right, so back to our presentation. This is normally how people go about introducing their companies and their products. They start off with introducing themselves, talk about their history, who their company is and who's in it and what they do and their services and why they're the best and blah, 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 blah. So Unfortunately, the majority of people think that telling people about their services is basically selling. And it seems logical, doesn't it? If I give you all the great information and I tell you how wonderful it is and how much time we took to develop it and all that, you'd think that people would then just jump to the logical conclusion, well, then I should buy it. But I'm going to show you how logic just isn't enough. Really, it just isn't enough to persuade and influence people to adopt your ideas and purchase your products. Now, in our webinar, we like to make sure that people have a chance to interact with us. So we produce a number of polls where we ask people questions and you have a chance to answer. And so we ask people, what is their typical reaction when somebody tries to sell you something? And we put up, are you curious? Are you interested? Or are you just straight out annoyed? And the majority of people in yesterday's webinar, and the majority of people that I work with all the time, day in and day out, are exactly that, annoyed. People are highly resistant to advertising and selling type messages these days, more so than ever. In a recent survey by the News Media and Marketing Association in the States, they came up with the result that roughly 65% of people today feel that they are constantly being bombarded with too much marketing and too much advertising, and they really consider it out of control. Well, what that means is that you, my friend, have a really big challenge when it comes to trying to sell your message, sell your product, sell your service. You have people that are coming to your presentation who are highly skeptical, first of all. They arrive that way. They're uninformed about your point of view, which is, your point of view is you think this thing is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Obviously, you wouldn't be standing up there if you didn't think it was wonderful. But they are completely unaware of why you think that. So they're very resistant to your message. And anything you say is going to meet that wall of resistance. So your job while you're standing up there or looking at this group of people is to be able to persuade the audience to just be able to see your point of view. You don't even want them to necessarily agree with it, and it's way too soon for them to buy into your idea. You just want them to be able to see it right now through your presentation. And while you're showing them your point of view, you're going to be working hard to build their trust, and you're going to be building understanding, laying down all the logical blocks, the logical connectors, so that they can understand your point of view. Again, not necessarily agree with it or even want it, but if at least they can understand it, then you are able to lower their resistance. Once their resistance is lowered, then there's the possibility that they will take the action that you want. And that's our goal, isn't it? So that's how we came up with this formula, the 3 steps that are necessary to engage and connect and motivate your audience. And we're going to take a look at these one by one right now. We're going to take a look at first, how do you engage quickly? What does that actually mean? Well, what it means is you're basically answering your audience's unspoken question, which is, why should I care about this? Well, you actually have with PowerPoint a massive engagement opportunity. I call it a tool, but it's really a massive engagement opportunity. Anytime you do a presentation, your engagement, your massive engagement tool is make it all about them, the audience, your client, your potential prospects. Make it all about them. Tell them the benefits of how it benefits them, how your solutions, how your products, how your ideas will actually affect their interests, not why you think it's such a great idea. You need to be explaining to them why it's such a great idea, such a great product, such a great service for them. You want to be able to tell them how your product, your service, your ideas will solve all their concern or solve their major concerns and issues, the things that keep them awake at night. How is this going to help them with that? In other words, you need to really and truly step into their shoes. Okay, well, maybe not these exact shoes. My audience gets a little quirky at times, but you want to be able to understand your audience, your client, so well that you can actually articulate what all their concerns, their needs, their problems are, because after all, that's what you're solving. So, what does it mean to talk from your audience's point of view? Well, first of all, you make sure that what you're talking about is what they care about. You're talking about their interests, their problems, and the things that keep them awake at night. You make sure that you create your message around one key message, not multiple messages, different things that you want them to consider, but one key message. And then you repeat and reinforce that key message throughout your presentation. It also means that you're going to walk them through or guide them through your logic. Why is it that you think your solution is such a good fit for their needs? Your PowerPoint is really like a map. It really is a way for you to get them from their current thinking to come over to your way of thinking. It's one thing to explain your thoughts, but through PowerPoint, you have a golden opportunity to actually show them what you're thinking. Let me give you an example. Let me show you what this actually looks like in real life. So this is a presentation I received from a client. I've masked out their logo and their company name to preserve their privacy. This is the actual presentation once I took the title slide off. They started off every one of their presentations with their history, all about them, and then they showed how they had grown over the years to be able to do all this stuff. And not only had they grown in the specific construction area, but they had grown so much that they actually could do all these other things. That was all very well and fine, but they found that people weren't really getting their message. So after we sat down with them, we talked to them and we said, okay, tell us about this history. Why really should people care about this? If we think back to that unspoken question that's in everybody's mind, why should I care about this? They explained to us that, great, they were established back in the early 80s, and right after that, a really big recession hit, and yet they were still able to grow and prosper even through the really hard times. And when I asked them why, what really did they attribute to that growth, they said that it was their key belief that what they have throughout their entire organization is their relationships are all based on trust and respect. They have trust and respect all the time with their clients, with their employees. I mean, these guys have been awarded Best Employer of the Year numerous times. They've been awarded huge contracts. They're a small organization, but they've been given some very big contracts with partner and supplier organizations because people know they can trust them and they respect them. If they say they're going to do something, it's absolutely done. When they put out their figures and their numbers, they know that they have absolutely gone through it with a fine-tooth comb. And they know when they say that they're going to help their community, they give back, they give to all sorts of charities, they sponsor various sports teams and that. They know that when they say they're going to do that, they absolutely come through, and even with more, and people respect them tremendously. So we listened to this and went, wow. They have some great stories, and that didn't come through at all in looking at a slide like this. So we went back and we worked on it a bit, and we changed it. Now, this is where the visual supports the message. I am not for 1 minute suggesting that the presentation become more important than the person standing at the front of the room. Not at all. You are the most important component there. Otherwise, just type up the information into a report and email it to everybody. They've come to see you explain about your product, your service, your idea. PowerPoint is there to reinforce it. So we want what they're watching to be able to be as well engaged as what they're hearing. So they talked, their biggest asset is trust and respect. That's the first thing we put up there. After the title slide that introduces the company and the date and stuff like that, this is the first slide that comes up. And it's there in the background while they tell the story, while they talk about how they have been building relationships since 1980. And that trust and respect are still the way that they operate. And they talk about their awards and how they've worked, and they give examples and all that. This is in the background, subtly reinforcing that all the time. Then they move on to, throughout all that great belief and how they imbue every action they do with trust and respect, then they talk about how they have grown. It's really exceptional how they've become one of the largest private construction firms in Western Canada. And they talk a little bit about the achievements. So they actually stand here and they talk at this point about how they've been awarded these, best employer, and how they've gotten industry accolades. And, again, their audience knows these awards, and they bring them up and talk about them. And it proves they're not just giving lip service to their exceptional abilities. Now, the next thing they want to go on to is tell people how capable they are, how they don't just do high rises, or they don't just do houses. So they gave this list, and I said, okay, that's a little dry. First of all, capacity just doesn't float my boat. It just doesn't sound very interesting. How about if instead we say that, you're experienced, okay, that you have a lot of experience in a lot of different areas. So we start to give the clients, the audience, a sense of their size by saying, we've got 150 employees in these 5 different sectors, and, we make it look a little interesting. Now, you'll notice up in the upper right-hand corner, I've stamped this as a good idea, and it's only that, just a good idea. I think we can improve on this and really make this list jump out. I'm not very fond of lists. We use lists for so much that they become mind-numbing. Think of your to-do list and how you feel every time you see it, or think of a shopping list, or, lists are just so ordinary, everyday, commonplace, and there's just nothing special about them. So when you've got a list of items, I think putting them into some other format, something as simple as a little rectangle, put the words in there with nice, good, thick font so that people can actually read it from the back of the room. Now that stands out a little bit more interestingly, gives a little bit more impact to what it is that you're trying to say. Another subtle feature that you probably don't notice here, but they certainly did, is do you notice the small rectangles down at the bottom of the screen? Well, that's their website design. That I took that off of their website, or we took that off of their website. Each one of those colors means that specific industry. So whenever they talk about industrial, the pages have got that kind of taupe color on it. Whenever they talk about residential, everything has got sort of like little green items and buttons and things on it, so that it's like a color coding, so that when you're in the orange pages, or the pages with the orange features, you're looking at special projects, and that helps people navigate throughout their site. Well, we just borrowed it for their presentation. Why not use what they've already developed and make it look a little bit more interesting at the same time? So that's what I mean by speaking from the client's point of view. Instead of standing there telling them how great they are, they turned it around, and they knew that the top 3 things the people are going to ask is, why should we do business with you? Once we figure out we should do business with you, then can we? Have you got enough capacity? And then what are the other things you could do for us? Which is what we did here. They had their services. Not only do they build, but they do all these other services. Again, another boring list that just doesn't quite do it. So I changed it into, instead of saying capacity, I'd said that they were very diverse. Now, some people love lists, and I'm not going to take that away from them. Again, you'll notice upper right-hand corner, I've stamped this. This is a good idea. This isn't bad. I wouldn't choke on this. But for my preference, I prefer to add the visual to it. If you're going to tell somebody something, show it to them. It reinforces. So when you're talking about the various forms, the various aspects of construction and construction management, why not put pictures of those? Now people actually see what you are saying. So this is how you get to reinforce what people are seeing. or what people are hearing. I want you to consider for a moment that when you go to talk about your product, your service, your ideas, your knowledge about those items is like a 50-gallon tank full of wonderful information. I mean, picture a rain barrel. It's like huge. It's full of information. And your audience, your client, their capacity is kind of like a glass worth. That's all they can absorb from you in one go. Just a glass worth of information. A small glass at that. Think of it that the glass is kind of like a Scotch on the rocks glass. And you've got your rain barrel and you're trying to pour some of that information into that glass. Your information that you're pouring shouldn't drown out the experience. If any of you are Scotch drinkers, you'll know what I mean. So your goal is to really tightly focus just what is it exactly that they need to know from their point of view on how you can solve their problems. As soon as I hear a client say, "Oh, I've got so much to say and I don't know where to start," I go, start by putting yourself in their shoes. What are they worried about? Stop thinking about how much should you pick and choose from. Think about what it was like to be them and then talk from that point of view. That seems to always help. Your number one clue that you're giving too much information, besides being able to see it like this, but your number one clue is when you find yourself describing. That always creates too much text. So here's where we've finished off taking a look quickly at our first step, which is this first step of our three-part formula. How do you grab your audience? Well, the very first thing you do is you engage them. You get them interested in what it is that you have to say by talking from their point of view. You make sure that you are establishing a single key message using as minimal text as possible, and get to the point quickly. Now that you've got their interest and they're ready to listen, maybe now you can actually begin to carry on with the rest of how your solution can actually help them. So normally here I would have people actually ask some questions. Again, as I say, please do send me your questions. I really look forward to hearing from you. All right, so now we're going to take a look at step number 2 in this formula. How do you connect deeply? Now that they're actually ready to listen to you, now you have to get past people's cynicism and apathy of, yeah, so what? How good could this be? Well, you want to be able to show them. That is your job. Your job as a presenter is not to read your script. It's not to drown them in information. Your job is really to create a sense for your audience, a sense of possibility, a sense of what your product could possibly do for them, or to create a sense of hope that this could actually be the product, the idea, the plan that solves their problem. Your job is to give them a sense of inspiration. You want to inspire these people so that they can actually get a sense that, oh wow, maybe this is the thing that can help me. Maybe these are the people that finally can help me with this problem that keeps me awake at night. That's your job. And in order to do this job well, you really need to discover the world of visuals and graphics. Visuals and graphics are not about making your slides look pretty. They are not decorative, not at all. There is an entire world of neuroscience that is dedicated to discovering how our brains actually function. And from the world of neuroscience, we know that over 75% of what you currently know, you learned from seeing it. Only 13% of what you have learned was taken in by listening to it, taken in and remembered. That's pretty small. So if you think you're going to stand up at the front of the room and talk to people and not show them anything, you're going to get very, very low interest and retention. 12% of what you know, the rest is made up from the other senses, taste, touch, smell, things like that. But look at that first statistic. 75% of what people know and how they learn is taken in visually. That gives you a huge opportunity. It is also the huge mistake that most people make. Because they put so many words on their slides, they're not using images. They're not using graphics. Of course, there's the whole issue of what image, what graphic, what's the right amount, how many do I put in, how big are they, do they slant, do they tilt, all that. I mean, I could spend an entire other course, and I do, teaching people how to use the right visuals. But for now, I want you to understand that visual processing uses two channels to access your brain. When you look at pictures, both sides of your brain are engaged. So at Impact Communications, we want you to get used to thinking about the two channels of your brain, your left brain and your right brain. So this is what PowerPoint's real job is. PowerPoint's real job is to take what your audience is listening to, the words that you're speaking and listening to, is going into the left side of their brain. When they're listening to you, they're being highly analytical and logical. They're even being scientific. And look at this. The left side of the brain is very detached. They just sit and listen and process it very logically. Whereas on the right side of the brain, look at all the great things that kick in once you trigger the right side of somebody's brain. They are creative, they are imaginative, so you don't have to spell out every single detail. Their imagination will get some of what you're saying. They're intuitive, they're able to look at the big picture. They're very figurative. So it's a tremendous part to access in using PowerPoint. Your PowerPoint's real job, when the eyes are looking at your slides, you want that right brain that's watching the slides to be connecting with the left brain that is listening to you. And that's why your slides need to be visual. So at this point in the webinar, I would normally ask people to just share with me. I'm just sort of plain out curious. How often do they tap into their right brain thinking? And people tell us anywhere from what right brain? I don't think I have one, all the way up to all the time and in between. So the purpose, again, throughout this webinar is to actually get people to start realizing and thinking about that right brain, because PowerPoint is not for you at all. It is not your teleprompter. It is not your script. It's not where you put your notes to read. It is entirely designed for your audience. And I'm going to narrow it down even further. It's for your audience's right brain. Your talking is providing the logic. That will match up with the images. So this is what most people do with their slides. They put in so much information. So how do you start to break it down? I think you're starting to get the point now that really so much information doesn't work. It's good in a report. And if that's what you need to do, write up a report and send it to people. But if you're pulling them into a presentation, please, 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 for goodness sake, don't read them. Don't put your report up on the slides. How do you start to cut this down? How do you begin to persuade them? You first of all just pick out the key points, and those are the ones highlighted in yellow. When was this founded? They've changed, all sorts of good stuff like that. Take those key points and basically create a very short fact sheet. That is the idea of bullets, is they're supposed to be very short, concise, only a couple of words. And usually at this point, people ask me all sorts of things like how many words per line, how many slides per presentation, all sorts of stuff like that. And I'm going to tell you right now, it doesn't matter. As many as are necessary, keeping it to the least amount possible, making sure that you only put in what's necessary and not one word nor one slide extra. That takes work, and I'm happy to work with people and show them how to do that. Going from a fact sheet, the better yet we know, going from a short fact sheet would be, could we show this visually? Absolutely. Now, if I was actually in a presentation, I would probably have these coming in one at a time so that I can pause each one and talk about them rather than have them all pop up at once. I wanted to show you, my group that I'm teaching, how you can take a fact sheet and turn it into something visual. Now, we're going to talk for a moment about images here. I could spend hours. We have many courses and workshops on how to work with images, as I mentioned, but I do need to talk about two key aspects about images before I go any further. One of them is a little bit of information about free images, and I know a lot of you can, easily search Google and find pictures for your presentations. And I do have to say that there is a big problem with that. You actually cannot safely use Google to find your images because the majority of those have copyright on it. All Google does is it finds images that are on the internet. Doesn't mean that they are free or available to use. People have already paid for those. They own them. They all have copyright issues. So unless you're prepared to invest the time to track down the copyright on each and every picture, you cannot use Google. You cannot use Google for your presentations. You're better off going to the paid sites, and actually almost every single paid site, this one is Dreamstime, for example, has a section of free images. Again, I could tell you much more, and in courses we have lots of recommended sites. I'm using pictures all the time. Would be happy to share that with you, but I did want to make sure that you understand the copyright issue with using Google issues, and that there are plenty of free ones out there. Now, when it comes to paid ones, did you know that you can get really awesome pictures for as little as $1? You can go to the various paid sites like iStock Photo and Veer and all sorts of other places by paying $1, get the smallest size of the image. Just buy the smallest size, because on the screen you just have to stretch it to fit your screen and the resolution will be good enough that it'll look excellent. So if you are buying them, make sure you're just buying the smallest size and then stretch it. Again, you need to know about preserving aspect ratios. There's all sorts of ways to make that image pop off better on your screen, to put borders around it to match colors, blah 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 blah. As I said, I have been working with presentations for over 10 years now. So I have lots of tips and tricks, but I wanted to make sure that you know these two very key ones. And also that you could use your own photos. You can beautifully take pictures and zoom and crop and blur and edit them and do all of that for free and have very creative pictures without having any artistic or graphical background. There's a lot of free software tools I use when I teach my courses, and I show people how to do these. So again, the message I'm giving here throughout this webinar, if you walk away with only one message, it's that you want to show people instead of tell people. When you find you're describing things like this, stop and say, how could I make that into an image? And in this case, about the new homes and the green homes, why not just say new homes, state what's so great about it that the client will like, which is affordable, and show a picture of one. There's another way to say that green homes save you money. They're economical. So you do put the keywords that will interest the client, not describe the product. The picture will show the product. Put the words that your client will be interested in and show them. You can even, if you don't have a lot of big pictures, you can use smaller pictures and put the words on the pictures. Or you don't even need to have pictures at all. You can simply use graphic shapes and some nice contrasting colors to show your message. I want to include, for our Small Business Center members, I want to include a bonus section. This is normally from another presentation that I do, but I wanted to really pass this on. I'm showing you how you are connecting deeply with your audience through visuals. Get that right brain going. I want you to be able to take that one step further and establish rapport. Why? Why do you want to establish rapport? Because you've got people like this that are still sitting back, and you want to be able to influence and persuade them with the least amount of resistance. And you do that with stories. Stories are the best way, proven over and over centuries, that the best way to pass on information, have people accept that information, and best yet, remember that information. What do most people try to do when they want to convince you of something? Well, if you're resistant, they usually bring out more numbers, more facts, more details, and they pile on all the data trying to convince you. What's the result with that when you pile on all the data? Yeah, exactly. You cannot motivate or inspire people if they are bored, worse yet, annoyed. You want to know an amazing secret? This is truly the $1,000 gold nugget of this webinar. It's this thing that surprises people the most. Data does not sell. Logic does not convince people. If it did, we wouldn't have smokers, we wouldn't have obese people, we wouldn't have heart attacks happening because of bad food, clogged arteries. We would have an entire globe filled with people that do safe and healthy things, right? So data and logic does not sell. What does sell people, the fastest and the best way, is for people to have an emotional reaction. Fear or pleasure. Fear that, oh my goodness, I'm losing out. Oh my goodness, that I'm not going to get that. Or pleasure, wow, more money, more of this, more of that. When your emotions are stimulated, that is happening because of right brain thinking. Do you see why it's so important to have visuals up there? Think about when your local pet shelter is trying to raise money. They're not even giving you a product. They just want you to fork over dollars. What do? They show you the most adorable, sweet, little pathetic animals that need your help so much. Why? Because it's your heart that reaches into your wallet to get your money, not your brain, not your logic. Now, your logic will support and substantiate and validate why you should do it, but rest assured, it is your heart that reaches in and does that action every single time. Well, okay, maybe not your heart exactly. You know that I'm speaking in metaphors here. It's your emotions that motivate you. So why tell these stories? As I said, because they actually lower resistance. They connect with people. You can deliver some incredibly complex messages through a story. Think about what we teach our children. All the stories about, like Little Red Riding Hood. Don't talk to strangers. What do? We make a wolf be a stranger and show what can happen if you talk to strangers. Look at how well they remember that. Same thing works in business. The power of storytelling, and these are a couple of books by Annette Simons and Jim Holche that tell you how you can use stories in business. The audience is allowed to form their own conclusion when they hear a story, which is very, very powerful. This is putting us in the realm of human psychology, and that's the other deep skill that we have at Impact Communications. We have studied and have for years, we have studied human psychology, human behavior, all that it takes to make people tick. Why do they do what they do? We've studied this for years. We have deep knowledge, and that's what we also imbue our clients' presentations with. Think about one of the great storytellers of our century that sadly we've just lost. Stephen Jobs was able to create access to emotions. Do you think people buy those iPhones because logically they want one? No, they take a look at it and they fall in love with the products. And he then uses a visual that can reinforce all of his story. And when the visuals reinforce the story, the tone and the mood of a story, that creates faster buy-in from your audience. How do you actually tell a story in the middle of a presentation? I can just see some people going, what? So like I just pull up a stool and sit there and open a book and read a story? Not quite. We're working with visual and spoken metaphors here. So what you can do is simply segue into, well, that reminds me of a story I heard recently where, and now you get to tell your story. Now, a lot of people say to me, where do I get these stories? Well, there's 3 kinds of stories you can use. You can definitely use stories about your own experience, a time or an event where you did something exceptional for a client or to get a job done on time, on budget. That's what my clients in construction did. They put up the trust and respect, and then they told stories that showed that. They didn't have to say, trust and respect us. They gave stories that showed how they trust and respect their clients. If you don't have any of those stories, one doesn't come to mind, or you don't have a very good example, ask around. Maybe you've got another colleague, somebody who's doing a similar business, that you could say, well, just like my colleague so-and-so, I believe that, or we have a situation where, and you can give examples that from them. If you don't even have any of those, then you can borrow. Take a look at your industry and find out who are the movers and shakers in your industry. Find stories about them that are emulating the values you want to display, and then weave those into your presentation. Now, at this point in our webinar, we wanted to ask people what single value did they want their audience, their clients, their potential candidates to identify most strongly with. We put up a list that had things like honesty, reliability, efficiency, things like that, and trustworthiness. And, it pretty much is, every single time I do this, it pretty much is trustworthiness that people want, is the single biggest value that people want to communicate. That's a challenge. How can you just stand there and say, trust me, or trust us? We won't make any mistakes, or we'll do a good job for you. It doesn't create trust when you tell people to trust you. You have to show them. Well, first of all, I'm going to show you how not to do it. Unfortunately, this is what I see a lot of time, is people, when they're trying to say we're good guys and we do great stuff, seem to go into all this really fluffy sales language. We are efficiency in providing superior service, and we believe in setting the bar high with our lofty but reachable goals. What does that mean? And then, in this particular one, they said that they were fiscally responsible and supporting every employee to achieve those results. There's a whole, I don't get what they're trying to tell me here. I know they're trying to tell me something, but it's sure not connecting, not in a powerful, clear way where I actually get to see, I get to feel what they're talking about. So I worked with this client and I said, okay, give me an example of superior service. Give me an example of where you set the bar high, and give me an example of where you were fiscally responsible. Like, prove it. So they gave me some previous work that they had done where they did superior service, and they talked about this client that, really had some very, very demanding needs, and how the company did everything bent over backwards and accommodated those needs for over a 9-month-long project. It was really amazing. And then when I said, setting the bar high, well, they had a medical building that was incredibly technologically difficult to build, and it had to be fit into like this ridiculously small amount of space to maximize the room that they were given on campus to build. And they did it, and they showed all the different things that could have and should have gone wrong, and how, because of their excellent planning, they didn't go wrong. They actually won an award for that very difficult building. And when I asked them about this, what do you mean by telling the client that you're fiscally responsible? Well, they have a particular way that they do their budgeting forecast so well, and they have some software, but it's their process that is so thorough that they had a job where they were actually building a very large, complex processing plant, a industrial gas plant, and they're over a 22 period of the 22 months of building this thing, their resource costs went up and down by as much as 25% in any given month. So it meant that this month my costs were only so much, and next month I didn't know how much they were going to be. They just kept climbing, and then they drop, and then they climb. They still brought the job in on time and on budget because their method of cost tracking is so superb. It lets them stay on track of everything and deliver it in the cost and in the time they said they would. So that is how you can actually show that you do something. You can show your values. Now, I've got them all on the screen here because I want to show you that with them in a real life presentation about this stuff. I'd only have one per slide, and I'd have lots of pictures of those jobs and people doing superior service, but that's not our presentation. I'm showing you how, and so I put them all on one slide, just so that you know. So once you engage with people, that's step number one of the formula. You are talking from their point of view so that you at least get their interest. Step number two of the formula is that you need to connect with them so that they actually get a sense of inspiration, of hope, like, wow, this could work for me. You need to engage their right brain thinking, because that's what will span the gap between what's happening today and the potential down the road of when they actually buy your service or use your product. Your bridge to that is right brain thinking. The other bridge is to be as clear, plain, blunt English as you can be. No fancy smancy sales, leveraging this and, maximizing that. Just tell it in plain English. People understand it. And most of all, show it instead of tell it. And my $100 tip is just for you guys is to tell you to add stories to your presentations for faster buy-in. So now we've got 2 steps out of the way, and unfortunately, this is where a lot of people actually stop. They think they've done their job, that the audience should be able to connect all the dots and decide to buy. I'm telling you that absolutely this is the worst place to stop. You want to go on to the 3rd step, which is, after this presentation, what action do you typically want people to take? You need to know, what is it that you want them to do? Do you want them to pick up the phone, click on a website, go down to their local MLAs, whatever. What action do you want them to take? And then your presentation, its last set of slides, is to motivate them. Give them that little nudge, that little incentive to act now. We are creatures that love to wait. We're creatures that love to sit and think, well, I don't know, maybe not, maybe yes, maybe not. When actually all we need to do is make a decision. Yes or no. Yes today, no tomorrow, whatever. But we want to take these people that we've gotten interested and they're maybe even a little bit excited, and now we want them to take an action. What action? Maybe sign up, maybe call. If they're going to sign up, then you want to have at the back of the room the table all laid out, the forms all ready, the pens poised for them to be as easily as possible led through that process to sign up. If you want them to call, make sure you have the phone number as big and clear as possible. You've got it in their hands. You've got it at the back of the room. You've got it everywhere that they could possibly need it, on your website, all over the place, so that they can actually pick up the phone and call. And if you want them to shop on your website, then have screenshots of what your website looks like so that they can actually go there and they recognize it already. You step them through what is involved in actually purchasing on your website so that you make it really clear. They only need a little encouragement with some really super simple steps. When you're wrapping up your presentation, you might want to consider one more form of really super simple encouragement, which is client testimonials. You can take something, an email, a real client story, and PowerPoint lets you pull out the best part and put emphasis on it. You don't want your audience to try and read all of this, although half of them probably will, but you want them to see the part that you're interested in showcasing. We're here for you 24/7, etc., etc. It shows that you're trustworthy. When you're doing your testimonials, pay attention to how these testimonials look. If possible, match color from your logos for design consistency. Again, this is the kind of thing at Impact Communications that we do all the time for our clients, is look at subtle ways to reinforce your branding message, that they can trust you, that you're polished, that you're professional, that you know what you're doing. I mean, there's a reason why we dress up in our best clothes when we go see a client. We want them to know that we're polished and professional. Our slides need to be that same way too. And if you should be so fortunate as to have a client who is well known, make sure you use their picture as part of that testimonial. That creates a huge degree of credibility for you. So these are simple ways that you can build client testimonials. There's lots of other motivators to give people a little nudge, just a little gentle push to take action. You're not demanding, you're not being pushy or obnoxious, you're just giving them a gentle nudge. Things like perhaps a free sample. Make sure that you have that prominently displayed wherever you're offering that it's a free sample. Or you may want to nudge them a little bit with time and give them a time-limited discount for the next 48 hours. Or give them, I like the positive incentives, which are early bird pricing. You know, up until this time, if you buy it now, you'll get it for cheaper than if you wait. You know, so an early bird special works really well to motivate people to purchase now and not get distracted and forget about it. Or bundle things. I like this one that says buy this song and get 2 others for free. So bundle your services wherever possible so that people are getting a sense of good value for their money, and it lets you sell a slightly bigger product price. And the last thing that I want to just run by you, that is that it's a very common marketing theory that it takes many touches. People say as many as 7 touches for people to actually purchase or make a final sale. 7 times that people need to hear about you and your product and your pricing. 7 touches, a phone call, they need an email, they come and see a sample, maybe they try another sample, they hear about you some more, they hear another testimonial. 7 touches before people are often ready to make any substantial amount of purchase. So if you've tried some of these things and they haven't worked, I'm encouraging you to keep on trying. You may just be somewhere in those 7 steps, and who knows, maybe the next one is what it'll take to nudge them into taking an action. So I'd like to summarize what we've covered in this webinar. We've taken a look at the whole purpose is when you are trying to sell somebody something, what's the formula? How can you actually grab your audience so that you can actually get their business? And the first step to grabbing your audience is to engage with them quickly. You want to get their interest. So you do that by talking from their point of view. You establish what's the single key message that you want them to hear, and you use minimal words and you describe it quickly. You get to the point quickly. I'd like to let you know that I also use this technique very successfully with my family. I have a teenage daughter, a 17-year-old, and these are the same exact techniques that I use when I'm trying to sell her on why she needs to do something I want. I talk from her point of view, I establish that one message, and I use minimal words, and I don't beat around the bush. We get to it quickly. So who knows, you might want to try adopting these for broader purposes than just your business presentations. Once you've engaged your audience quickly, then the next thing you want to do is connect with them deeply. You want to be able to stimulate that right brain activity because it is what will bridge the gap between what's happening today and the possibility of them then buying your product. The right brain is what bridges the gap because the left brain has no imagination. It only knows yes, no. That's it. So you need to stimulate that right brain activity with visuals. Be sure to use clear and plain English, and as often as possible, because you're not putting many words on your slides, show people with nice, big, bright images what you are telling them. And if you want faster buy-in, use some stories that will support your point. Once you've got them interested and perhaps maybe even a little excited about the possibility of using your services, your products, then you want to give them just a little nudge and motivate them into action. So make it clear what that action is. What do you want them to do? Pick up the phone, go to a website, pull out their credit card, go to the back of the room. What do you want them to do? And establish that clearly. Make it as super easy as possible for them to do that. So that means you've got to go through the sequence yourself. Make sure that it's smooth and as simple as can be. Use client testimonials so that they can be assured that you are credible and successful. And create a little bit of urgency for them to act. Not pressure, but that by putting a little bit of a time limit on it or the early bird specials encourages people to act now, so it's not hanging around, yet one more thing to have to think about. As we're wrapping up now, I'd like to leave you just with one last thought around creating successful presentations. I'd like to suggest to you, I'd like you to consider that your presentation is merely the tip of a very large iceberg. Way back when you started your business, when you started to work out your plan, your product development took a lot of time to research and development. You had to license it maybe. You had to go through all that there was to create your product. Then you had to have people to help you. There was recruiting and salaries and training. You needed a facility. You had expenses in developing this product. Then the money and time that you spent marketing it in advertising, in design, business cards, letterhead, websites, all of that stuff, the time that you spend on LinkedIn, Twitter, social media sites, telling people about your product, all of that has been a huge investment. That's a huge chunk of time. And now that you're going to go out into the world and tell people, show people about your product, you're going to use a presentation, and the huge disconnect for me is how little time people spend on this tip of the iceberg. They spend tons of time and money in the other three stages, and yet when it comes to this very public, crucial presentation, no time is spent in delivering it. We don't even know that people are considering, do they have the ability to design these? I don't see many people actually spending time reviewing and assessing how well did their presentation create the results that they want. They don't do any review or assessment on them. I sure don't see a lot of people rehearsing a lot. And again, a lot of people don't go back and follow up on their presentation and go, did it deliver? Did it really deliver what I wanted it to say? And did it motivate people to take the action that I wanted? So we're in this business, of course. This is what we do at Impact Communications. We live, breathe, and eat presentations. And for us, this is a huge disconnect that not many people are aware of this. And so that's our mission in life, is to educate people, to show them what the potential, how presentations can really add. So there's lots of resources out there. We know there's great books on design. There's wonderful books and information on the internet on how to tell stories and how to actually improve your selling skills. These are three of my favorites. But what I'd like to suggest is that consider using a company that this is what we do for a living. We are communication and development specialists. We have all the latest and up-to-date information. And on top of that, many of us have been teaching for years. So we know how to turn this information into practical solutions that you can use. So I'd like to let you know about one of those practical solutions where you could save time and you could actually learn how to do this with Impact Communications. We have an online training workshop coming up. We know that a lot of you aren't local. We live online. So we have 2 sessions for 2 days. It's a 4-hour course. We divided it into 2 days because 4 hours is just too long to sit at the computer. That course is coming up on September 18th and 19th, which is a Tuesday and a Wednesday. So 2 hours on Tuesday and 2 hours on Wednesday. Normally, when we teach this course, we charge people $199. We have a classroom here in Vancouver, and we're able to have people come in, and we charge them $199 to get this same half-day course. For the members of Small Business Center, we are providing this online to you for a great reduction. You're going to get all that content, materials, workbooks, exercises, working live with an instructor from Impact Communications, going through this material for 4 hours over 2 days for $129. And just to sweeten the pot, you know that I believe in helping people make decisions early so you can get it over and done with and on with your busy day. We have an early bird price that if you register by Friday, August 17th, that gives you almost a month, you can get this course for $99. Yes, quite a savings. You can do this. You can learn how to persuade, influence, and motivate your audience, whether it be your business audience, your political audience, your purchasing audience, even your family audience. You can learn how to do this, and we can show you how to do that. So I really would like to thank you for your interest in our service and for your attendance, for listening to this. I really want to thank Small Business Center for inviting us to present. My information is on here if you want to get in touch with me or anybody at Impact Communications. And we will be sending out feedback. Now, I think the feedback seminar survey was automatically sent out by the software yesterday. If you could please complete it and let us know what you think about this presentation, I'd really appreciate it. As a way of saying thank you for that, then I will send you a PDF of these slides. Will be a great tool for you to use when you're building your future presentations. And if you already deleted that survey, just send me an email and I'll be happy to send it back out to you again. So again, consider taking some training, a small investment in your learning and career development. This online workshop coming up, there's the early bird price of $99. Here's what it will look like on Rayhan's site when you go to Small Business Center. He's got it down in this bottom right-hand corner. You just click here and you'll be able to then go through the process of registering. And I really hope to see you in September. Thanks again. It's been a pleasure. Bye now.